Live from New York City, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sean Hannity.
All right, Mr. Tucker Carlson, great show as always. Thank you, Tucker. Welcome to Hannity. All right, tonight, President Trump, he is on fire. What is he doing? Working for you, the American people. And by the way, this is all news you will not get from the Destroy Trump media. Now, the commander-in-chief is now following through on his tough talk about securing the southern border. And earlier today, he signed a proclamation to immediately deploy the National Guard to help enforce America's immigration laws. Now, new poll numbers prove the Trump agenda is working despite, of course, fierce liberal opposition. Now, also tonight, we have information. The House Intel Committee Chairman, Devin Nunes, he is blasting the Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein for stonewalling Congress. This needs to end. We'll explain. Rod Rosenstein needs to be fired. And Nunes is also demanding that the FBI, the DOJ, hand over the key documents about the opening of the Russia investigation. Plus, we have media reacting to the president. And by the way, that he's not a target. Oh, it's driving them insane, and he's only a subject in the corrupt Mueller investigation. There's a total freakout over this, and Jonathan Turley is out with a brand-new op-ed that is bashing the abusively biased press for refusing to accept this fact. Also tonight, Alan Dershowitz was phenomenal last night. He is back, as well as Joe DeGeneva. They'll give us reaction to the latest legal developments. And Jason Chaffetz, Congressman Chaffetz, he has a list of the top 10 things Congress should be doing right now so that they will serve you, the American people. They're supposed to be public servants, and it would help Republicans in the end actually win. He'll join us with all the details. We have all of that and so much more in our breaking news opening monologue. All right, tonight, President Trump is on a complete tear by continuing to keep his promises and enact the agenda that you, the American people, voted for in November of 2016. The DHS Secretary, Kirstjen Nielsen, she made a major announcement earlier today about President Trump's plan to secure the southern border. Here's what she said.
The president has directed the National Guard personnel be deployed to the southern border. The Department of Defense, as you know, has long supported the efforts of DHS to protect our nation's borders. This includes ongoing counter-narcotic missions, infrastructure construction, persistent surveillance operations training, and aerial support throughout the Western Hemisphere. The Department of Defense is a longtime partner of the Department of Homeland Security, and I thank them for their support. While plans are being finalized, it's our expectation that the National Guard will deploy personnel in support of CBP's border security mission.
And tonight we have learned that President Trump has signed the proclamation to send the National Guard to the southern border. Now, the president, he deserves a lot of credit because if Congress, if they're not going to lift a finger to solve the problem, then he is going to take the steps as commander-in-chief and do it on his own, which he now has. Now, before the liberal media, all you leftists out there, start losing your collective minds over the National Guard being deployed at the southern border, with all due respect, we will educate you. There is already precedence for all of this. Both George W. Bush and Barack Obama, they actually did the exact same thing. And President Trump's tough rhetoric calling for Mexico to disband this caravan, as you see, of asylum seekers heading for the U.S. border, that's also working. Now, according to reports, more than 1,000-person caravan has now fallen apart. Leaders of the group are now saying they will no longer head for America's southern border. Now, this is the start of good news for the president. Look at this, a brand new Rasmussen poll. His approval rating is now 51%, which is higher than Barack Obama's during the exact same time in his presidency. He was only at 46%, and he got reelected. But the liberal media probably won't be telling you that tonight. They're too busy orchestrating an onslaught of any negative story that they possibly can find, obsessing over, oh, Stormy Daniels and Trump-Russia collusion, Russia, that doesn't exist. Now, there's also a fake news CNN poll. This is pretty amazing. It shows President Trump making major gains with 4 key groups. He's gained 8 points with men since February, 5 points with younger voters, 9 points with middle-aged voters, and he's up by 10 points with college graduates. Now, here's what's so interesting about these polls. Just imagine if the president wasn't constantly under attack from a media that wants to destroy him. Imagine if Robert Mueller and his team of Democratic donors weren't carrying out their never-ending witch hunt. Don't you think the president's poll numbers would be a lot higher if a majority of the country wasn't being fed an endless stream of outright lies, propaganda, distortion, and misinformation? Now, despite all of that, President Trump, He's just rolling along doing his job every day, the job that you elected him to do. Look at this, manufacturing. This is good news. By the way, for the media to be so successful in their attacks against Trump, they're kind of cheering against the country succeeding. Look at this, the strongest in 3 years. ADP, Moody's Analytics, they are now saying that 241,000 jobs created in March, and that's on top of the record low unemployment levels that we now have. Over 3 million jobs created since Donald Trump's elected. And by the way, the lowest unemployment numbers ever for African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Look at this, home equity at a record level, $5.4 trillion. The president is also taking a big step. This is amazing. Nobody ever reports it, to make health care more affordable for everybody and getting around some of the devastating Obamacare mandates. Here's an op-ed in USA Today explains how the Trump administration is now set to lay out a new rule. They're about to implement this. It will lower the costs, create choices by expanding association health plans. Now, these plans allow businesses and trade associations to come together, buy health insurance plans in bulk. That saves a ton of money. And by the way, a huge development. You get more care for less money. And the president also is taking steps to reduce the bloat. Remember that $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill that nobody liked? Well, thank God he reluctantly signed it. Now this is the bill that the president threatened to veto. But remember, he was forced to kind of sign it because Congress, well, they left town. They're too lazy. Well, now the White House is looking into using what is known as the Impoundment Control Act. It's a law from 1974. It gives the president the authority to cancel spending already approved by Congress. And by the way, they only need 51 votes in the Senate, Mitch. Congress would have 45 days to approve the president's request to cut from the massive spending bill. Again, he's keeping a promise. Let's hope that happens. Then on top of all of this, just take a look at the side of your screen. You'll never see this in the media. A list of just some of the president's many accomplishments during his short time in office. Now, remember, the Heritage Foundation, they did a study of the president's first year. They found he has already accomplished 64% of his agenda, which, by the way, is higher than Ronald Reagan's 49% at the same time in his presidency. These are real, tangible achievements that help the forgotten men and women that voted in November of 2016 that the liberal media will never talk about because they never want to give the president credit for anything. And as we've been explaining, President Trump is just on fire, and it's time for congressional Republicans to follow suit. Time to get a backbone. Time to keep their promises. No more waiting around. Let's see what happens in 2018. It's time for members of the GOP keep their word, keep their promises. And that means they should build this southern wall. They should keep the 7-year promise to repeal and replace Obamacare. You know, things that they all said and promised when they were campaigning. Now, here's what's going to happen if Republicans don't keep their promises. Democrats are going to try to systematically undo every single one of those accomplishments. We'll put them back on the screen. Nancy Pelosi has already threatened that she's going to try and repeal the tax cuts that benefit 90% of Americans. By the way, you keep going, Nancy. Good job. Don't stop. I want you to stay on message. So it's up to congressional Republicans to show some backbone, some spine, and actually fight for the president's agenda that you voted for. Now, former House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz. Now, he's going to join us in a few minutes. He's out with a list of 10 things that Congress should be doing right now. In the article, Chaffetz suggests Congress should explain and clarify the conflicts of interest on Special Counsel Mueller's team. I don't think there is an explanation. They should formally demand the appointment of a second special prosecutor with the power to prosecute. He lists call FISA court judges before Congress to offer public testimony. They were all lied to. Call Attorney General Jeff Sessions to testify about outstanding congressional subpoenas, hold hearings on securing our borders, fortifying them with a wall, and then pass legislation allowing the president to reallocate funds from the DOD. And, of course, Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf, she should be called to testify. Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and Twitter's Jack Dorsey, they should be called to testify about their speech suppression practices, especially against conservatives. So Zuckerberg will testify before lawmakers next week about Cambridge Analytics. Now, Congress, by the way, should make an effort to reform the broken budget process. They should give states the opportunity to vote on whether Congress should be subject to balancing the federal budget. And finally, the Senate should refuse to recess until every single one of the president's appointees have been voted on. Mitch, time to work. Anyway, Congressman Chaffetz will be here in a minute. But first,